Hi, my name is Harvey Tomaselli. I make 35 years old this year. I am from Hau'ula, Hawaii, but was raised in Honolulu, Hawaii, um, from when I was 5 till 35. Um, my mom is from Hau'ula. She comes from a family of 13 kids, so we had a very large family. My dad was orphaned, and he was uh, a part of the Salvation Army orphan system. And they met uh, through one of my aunties who used to work at Salvation Army. One day he came back to visit, and my mom was at work with my auntie, and they met. 10 years later, they got married when my dad was 40, and they had me. I come from a very religious family. Half my family is Mormon, the other half is Catholic. Um, my mom and dad loved me very much. In fact, my mom was the only person that I could count on my entire life. And, in hindsight, I never appreciated who she was and how she loved me until after she died. Uh, Coming from a very religious family, there was a stigma on people like me. And my mom knew from an early age that I was different. And she never tried to change that difference. She would foster it because she knew inherently that I was a very good person. Uh, my mom and dad were raised in poverty, so one of the promises they made to themselves was to raise their kids with a proper education. So they used most of their savings and their money to send me and my sister to private school. I had a sister that was 4 years older than me. Her name was Rochelle. And she was abandoned by my mom's older sister when she was 2. Uh, my sister Rochelle was 4 years older than me. And eventually, my mom and my dad um, adopted her and raised her as their own. And we never knew anything about it until like when we were 10 years old. Um, so my dad was a foreman at Pearl Harbor, shop 38 or 39, if I can remember correctly. So from all of my mom's brothers and sisters, uh, she did well for herself financially. Well, my dad did well for both of them. So we were at a different level than her siblings growing up. My mom was always the one with money. And of course, she used that money to compensate, to make sure that all her brothers and sisters were also well taken care of. Um, so I grew up with a lot of animosity and jealousy toward us because of our financial upbringing and because we went to private school. All my other cousins were students and my aunties and uncles were all graduates of Kahuku High School. So, we grew up with a lot of snickering and, trying, my cousins thinking that we're better than them. But that was never the case. Um, the one thing that my mom made sure to instill in me and my sister was love, as taught by Jesus. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not boast. Uh, you know, it's, it comes unto itself when it is ready. So I just made sure that I always loved my family the way that God wanted me to love them. And just put up with a lot of their, now that I see, negativity. But that negativity, I realize, was something that is passed on through generations. And that is something that I should have learned to forgive and have compassion for at a younger age. growing up gay in a predominantly Christian family was very hard. Um, I felt like I didn't fit in at all. My boy cousins never talked to me. Until this day, they would just stand on the side. So I was raised with my girl cousins because I felt more comfortable and they were more accepting of me. And that is when my addiction started. At 8 years old, I began drinking uh, every weekend. It started because I come from an alcoholic family, and there was like one of those old Hawaiian alcoholic families where you have like a refrigerator just for beer and spirits on top of the lanai, and then there's a separate bar for all of the other leftover hard liquor from nights before. So we had like this collection of liquor that was not monitored. So me and my cousins started getting into it. Eventually, it was every single weekend. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we would just get drunk. Uh, I went to St. Patrick's School, 9 year student. I graduated from 8th grade, and then after I transferred to Kamehameha, and I remember vividly every time when I was used to catch the bus from Kaula to Kamehameha schools in the morning, I would have my own thermos of hard liquor because I've learned that that was the only way to deal with the uncomfortableness of being myself. I just did not feel comfortable or accepted at all, and that's no one's fault but me. That I was not accepting of who I was at a young age. Well, eventually I graduated from Kamehameha. I did very well for myself. I went to states twice with speech and debate. Nationals twice with speech and debate. I was a part of the concert glee choir that traveled all over Europe and the continental United States. Uh, did very well in school. I had a 3.9 GPA, and then got into UH, and still I did not feel comfortable with myself. And I tried to overcompensate with that uncomfortableness by excelling in my academics and my extracurricular activities. Eventually, when I did get my first job, um, that transferred to doing very well in what's it called, in my career. When I was 19, I got hired at Duty Free Shoppers as a um, visual merchandiser, and that was one of my first dream jobs because of the movie Mannequin. I wanted to be just like Hollywood, fabulous like Hollywood. So I would never think that I would have the opportunity to get into that that career until I met someone that was working doing window displays at Duty Free, and they were asking if they're looking for new recruits. And at a young age, I got that job. I was the youngest person there. Uh, it was to the point where they had to like sneak me into bars just so that I could join them. um, my alcoholism continued through my work career, but eventually it stopped around 26 when I got into a big brawl in the street. Someone cut us off, and I got into a big fight um, on the road in Waikiki, and I made the stupid move of hitting someone through their car window. Uh, so that is when I realized that it's a felony to unauthorized entry into a motor vehicle, even if you put your hand through their car window to punch them. So they charged me, my first felony, and I was put on probation for 5 years. And one of the stipulations was to stop drinking and drugging. So I stopped drinking for 2 years. Eventually, I got back into it, because uh, one of my friends, while we were watching Sex in the City, and it was that episode where Carrie got stoned. She asked me if I wanted to get stoned in her bathroom, which I did. Now the coincidence of that happening at that time. So I've been working with duty free for at least 6 years. Then never got a random drug test. So before I hit that joint, I told her, "What is the odds of me getting drug tested tomorrow?" I got drug tested the next day, so I had to call her to ask her advice of what I should do. And she told me exactly she was gonna get me this drink, and then she's gonna throw it over the fence at the store. And all you gotta do is drink it and then take your drug test. So I did that, and I passed. But it did not pass when I got drug tested for my probation, and they extended my probation for 2 more years. So I eventually got off of it, but that was the beginning of my drug journey. I was a big pothead, and that was the next journey of me numbing my own pain, of not understanding why I feel so uncomfortable. Why don't I feel like, why don't why am I not accepted by the people around me, especially my own family? And it just got progressively worse until my mom died. And I realized after she was gone how her all encompassing unconditional love was the only saving grace in my life. The night she died, and I remember this vividly, I lived on the second floor. So sound travels up, and my entire family was downstairs drinking, and I could hear them talking about me. At first, I didn't want to be paranoid and try and give them the benefit of the doubt. But my same best friend that got me stoned years before came up to my room that night, and she found me in my bed shaking because I just didn't know how to handle it. And the first words out of her mouth was, "Do you know that your family is downstairs planning your demise?" And my reaction was, "Yeah, I can hear them." They stopped talking to me. It's like all 137 members of my family. I wasn't invited to any family functions. So that's when my drug use got harder. And I turned to spice because it was the easiest thing to get. And eventually, it led to meth. 2 years after my mom died, I left Ha'ula, and I never returned. That was 8 years ago. Eventually, my life spiraled out of control. At this point, I already quit duty free to go back to school. and start a new career. And I found myself working for a shipping company uh, as an assistant to the general manager. And although it was a lucrative career, it was not good for my sobriety because, especially for management, drinking was the culture. Um, so I got drunker and drunker, just trying to deal with the pain. And alcohol mixed with meth and spice and marijuana eventually turned me insane, especially with not knowing why my family hated me so much, without healing that pain or even trying to understand theirs. And that is no one's fault but mine. I found myself homeless a year and a half ago. And that gradually deteriorated my own self worth until one day on the beaches of Wailua, uh, living out of my tent, I decided to end it all. And that was December 19th, 2023. And the reason why I decided to end it all there is I realized the Thanksgiving before, the month before, that nobody really gives a shit about me, so why should I give a shit about myself? And I didn't want that emptiness to be revisited on me on Christmas. And for you, those people out there who graduated from Kamehameha, you also know that December 19th is Founders Day. So my intention was to slip my wrist and walk into the ocean. And of course, being the responsible person that I was raised up to be, I did not want anyone to feel any remorse, even though they didn't care about me. I still, always had that hope that things will always turn around. I didn't want anyone to feel remorse, or I didn't want to leave any type of burden, especially on top of the police, for finding my body and having to do their investigation. So I wrote a suicide note, an explanation, and I locked it on my Facebook because I knew that the first things that they would try and research is my social media. And I locked it because I didn't want anyone else to see. That wasn't my intention, to try and get attention from anyone to come and help me. It was more so that they could find it, because if I left it in my tent, my tent might blow away, or someone might steal my stuff. So, at least it was kept in perpetuity on top of a digital platform. And as I was getting higher than a kite, ready to sit my wrist. Now, I should mention this too. So I practiced, because the one thing I knew is I didn't want to be chicken shit of cutting my own wrist and doing it incorrectly. I needed to know the exact pressure needed and where to cut. So I practiced on chicken, you know? So at that moment, I know when it's time, all I have to do is press this hard and just do it. To look at your arms and just walk into the ocean. And the reason why I wanted to walk into the ocean is because I didn't want to leave a mess for any kids to find on the beach. So yeah, I was listening to music, getting higher than a kite, 11:30. I was gonna do it by 12 because, and I'm one with numbers, and a clip interrupted the music playlist, and it was a clip about a newscaster talking about her husband, how they had such a wonderful life, how they met, and she would love and support her through everything. But eventually, this 5 minute clip at the ending turned a little dark, and she was speaking about how she didn't know that he was suffering from a quiet mental illness that eventually led to his own suicide. And one of the things I vividly remember from that, what's it called? That testimony was, I wish I knew so I could have helped him. And she left with these words: if there is anyone out there that needs help, here is the number to call. Please don't hesitate to call. And I looked up to the sky, and I spoke to God, and I said, really, right now, at this moment? So I told him, okay, if this is true, I will call the number. But if this is bullshit and they're gonna try me, just tell me, like, uh, to love myself and get over it, then I'll better off. I'm going through with this. So I called 988, not knowing that it would go to a local dispatch here in Hawaii who was really there to help. And so, I called. They said, where are you? I told them where I'm at. I told them what I'm about to do. And they said, just hold tight. We'll be there to pick you up. And my first thought was, yeah, right. You're going to come and scour the beaches of Wailua Coast looking for me. But they did. They came, picked me up. I went to Kekela Ward at Queens. That was hard for me to do because the one thing I had to do was do it myself. They said, okay, you need to go and check in here. And my first question to the caseworker was, isn't this for like people who need help, who are like physically in need of help? And she said to me, you are physically in need of help. You need to check yourself in. So I did. It took me a while, like, to try and force myself to do it because that was my first um, vulnerable and shameful thing that I had to get over. Everything else was easy after that. Checked myself in. Because I didn't have any medical or any money, they put me in a special holding room that had no furniture or anything. I had to like lay on the floor and just wait for 4 hours. Eventually, I was checked in. They took me up to the ward. I stayed there for almost 2 weeks until I got all my psychiatric and psychological um, tools that I needed, and eventually they referred me to a Kolu. Uh, while I was at Kekela Ward, I never knew how much trauma that I lived with. I mean, it's just something that you deal with by yourself. You don't think that you ever need help, or that, you know, waking up screaming at night is not normal. Or having a hard time sleep, or like, not trusting for people to like touch you. So yeah, I went after I went through that process of getting my mind and my emotions straight. I went to Ekolu, met some more caseworkers that helped me with my benefits, and eventually signing me up for Hinamalka. Now, Hinamalka was another situation that I was not prepared for. So I never knew I had a drug problem or an alcohol problem. It's just something you learn, that you grow up with here in Hawaii. I mean, it's just a given. You just drink on the weekends. So I did not know what drug rehab was, or even what AA or NA was. The only reference I had to AA was Clueless, at the end of the movie, when Cher talks to that skater boy and he goes 12 steps. And I didn't even know what the 12 steps was because I never really looked up what the reference was. So that was like the only understanding of AA that I had, that that there's 12 steps to like be sober. Of course, I didn't even know what sober for me is, not drinking for 2 weeks. So, so yeah, I eventually went to Hinamalka. Um, and while at Hinamalka, I realized that the work they were doing in helping people look inward is exactly the work I wanted to do for myself and for other people. So I would just pray to God. I hope that this will be my next journey in life, to be a caseworker and a peer specialist and eventually a counselor and a psychologist to help other people, because I didn't know it was a problem. I didn't know that there was ways around it, that you don't have to live with this burden from a young age, that there's ways to like heal it, and that healing starts with first accepting your life for what it is. Everybody hurts. It's part of our society. But then you have to understand why they hurt and what is yours, your hurt, and what someone else's hurt. And also, you truly have to understand, to live with compassion, to really understand what compassion is to meet someone exactly where they are and to accept them exactly where they are, good and bad. You don't have to change nobody. The only person that you should be able to learn to change is yourself, if you want to change. So yeah, I would pray to God while I was in Hinamalka, and when I was released, I had the opportunity while so after Hinamalka, after my 2 months at Hinamalka, I was released to sober house, Healaho Keola sober housing in Luapele. And eventually, while staying at a sober house, I met the founder, David Makilan, and he asked me, "Hey, I just opened up a treatment facility. If you ever want to come and help, you know, I don't mind. You can come and help us." So I jumped at the opportunity, and I started off as just checking in intakes, and that was 9 months ago. Since then, I've got my peer specialist degree. I've certified with CES to help homeless people, and I just got promoted to program director. So this is my own little Hinamalka now. And my goals for the future is, in 5 years, is to, of course, eventually get my CSAC. That's like the little side stop before I get my psychology degree. Um, because although this line of work is very stressful, it is most rewarding to see people heal like how I healed. Uh, Everybody hurts. You just have to learn how to deal with that hurt. And it also, I've learned it's not helping people that make the most impact, it's helping yourself first. Because in leading by that example, other people follow. Um, and I don't regret anything of my past, because it was meant to be exactly how it was supposed to be. I forgive my parents, I forgive myself, I forgive my family, I forgive myself. Because everything happens for a reason. And I am, in hindsight, I'm have no regret for how I treated them because I never gave any of that hurt back to any of my family. I will never. Because I still love them. I think of them every day. So yeah, that's my story.